The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in the podcast belong solely to the hosts and not the host's past, present, or future employers. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's Brian for Breaking Down Security. This week is part 2 of our interview with owner and CEO of LutaSecurity, Katie Moussouris. Last week, we interviewed her about her vulnerability coordination maturity model. There's a lot of great discussion there. If you want to go back and listen to episode 36, this week on episode 37, we're going to. The first question I ask out of the gate this week is, what of the 5 facets of the VCMM, the Vulnerability Coordination Maturity Model, is essential for implementing this in your organization? If you don't have a way of allowing people to disclose security issues in your applications or on your website, or if you have a hardware device or an IoT, or you use custom software. I mean, this is similar to how we talked about a month and a half or 2 months ago with the JSOF CEO about Trek, custom TCP/IP software. They didn't have a method by which they could share their vulnerabilities with Trek. So JSOF had to, go the long route, and it got very complicated. So this part 1 of last week and part 2 of this week is a great way to help your organization understand what is needed to handle situations where somebody might come in and go, hey, you've got a vulnerability in X, Y, and Z, or, your hardware device has this, or it's vulnerable to this because of supply chain issues, and what you can do to cope with those and create potential workflows or pipelines to handle vulnerability information as it comes in. So we're going to get started right away. The first question I ask is concerning the various facets of the VCMM, and what should be one of the first things we look at when we're trying to implement this framework. Hope you have a great week. Cool. So in the slides that you have, there's a spider chart, which I find very, very cool. It's a good way of visually showing what you're doing. You have organizational, engineering, analytics, communications, incentives. If somebody's trying to establish this, this is not like an OODA loop or anything like that, where it's, plan, do, check, act, or whatever. Is there you have 3 on organization and, 2 on engineering. Which one of these is what you would consider the most important? I mean, in my opinion, it would be the organizational, because having just done my change management thing, you have to have executive buy-in for at least to be able to implement this. But if, what would be the first thing that I would want to get up to a level 1 or a 2 or whatever in terms of the maturity model?
Well, one important thing about the vulnerability coordination maturity model is that the basic level in all categories is what I recommend that you start with if you intend to actually do a Vuln Disclosure program. Most organizations are at sub-basic level in one, if not all, of those categories. You nailed it, though. Organizationally, that is the first step. That is the very first thing you need. You need to hit basic level that your organization has made a commitment to respond if someone tells you about a security vulnerability. That's it. It's just, yep, we're going to do something about it. We've decided that security is important and it's one of the company's core values, and we're going to act on it. Because otherwise, without that organizational buy-in, as you said, they're not going to provide the resources to build out any of the other systems, that are necessary for a successful VDP. But yeah, absolutely. Organization is the most important. And then hitting basic at every capability area of all 5 is what we recommend before launching a VDP.
Okay. I was thinking, it'd be like organizational, and then it's really easy to screw this up when you're announcing that you're going to have a vulnerability program. So communication would be important. But then I can also see where, setting scope. I worked at an organization that had a bug bounty program, and they set a scope of, some part of our external footprint, but not the entire external footprint. So we were getting, disclosures of LOL totally pwned you. And it's like, but that's the marketing website. Nobody should care about the marketing website. Please pay us monies or we will, disclose this. And it's like, okay, great. Now we're, basically running an IR operation for the marketing website. Why is this not patched or, whatever. Yeah, and then I've got some examples down here where Yahoo was giving out T-shirts for what amounted to $15,000 bounties. So the other one I would like to talk about would be the incentive portion. You have a maturity level of basically giving out T-shirts or 10 as I've heard you speak before about the 10-point font on finding something. How do you get people to want to communicate vulnerabilities to you if they know, depending on what level you're at, that you're going to just tell them, well, thank you for the bug. Please come again when we can actually afford to pay you, or, here's $1,000 for what would obviously on the dark web be a $10,000 bug. How do you communicate you specifically as the person creating this to a company that's like, well, we only really have $1,000 to be able to give, and you're like, yeah, why don't you not give yourself a bonus this year, CEO, and actually put some real money in this budget?
So for me, the maturity model incentive category is really about what is the incentive for somebody to report a vulnerability to you privately and give you a chance to fix it. And how can you increase the chances that that will occur? Because that is the idealized Vuln disclosure process. Someone finds a bug, they don't tell anyone but you, they privately tell you, and they give you a reasonable amount of time to fix it. And then ideally you jointly go out in public and say, this nice person reported a vulnerability. We fixed it. Here's the patch, and here's what you need to know. And they maybe do a nice write-up of their discovery process or the cool exploit they wrote or whatever it is. That's the idealized VDP. So when we look at the vuln coordination maturity model, the incentive category is, how do you make that magic happen? How do you incentivize anyone to come to you directly? Money is absolutely not the most important lever at all. It is, in fact, one of the things that gets, confusing about incentives. Did you know that that Microsoft got huge participation in various programs that used a very simple incentive, and it was a non-monetary incentive. It was you could if you did a bunch of challenge questions towards getting an interview with Microsoft security, there were sort of an increasing number of questions that you could answer. And if you answered them correctly, you'd get an interview with Microsoft. But you'd also get this one-time download code for an Xbox avatar piece of clothing, which was a black t-shirt that said hacker. And you couldn't get it any other way. There was no other way to get it except to qualify for it and stuff. So when we talk about incentives, it's not about the money. It's about outcomes, right? And you ideally want to foster good relationships with the people who are willing to tell you about bugs, whether that's money or something cool like an Xbox black t-shirt that says hacker, or an invitation to speak directly to some of the executives for an entire product line, like at the Blue Hat conference. That's an incentive. Right. So it's not really about money, because you and I all know, and especially folks who can hack, we could mint money if we wanted to. The hackers, that really are, the ones that you want to build long and durable relationships with are the hackers that might be interested in money, but in that sense, you want to really figure out, what they really want. Most of them just want to see the bugs fixed in a reasonable amount of time, not to be given the runaround or disrespected by the receiving organization, and to be reassured that if they're acting in good faith and reporting issues to the organization, that the organization isn't going to turn around and sue them. So that's why the very first basic incentive there is just to have a clear statement that you're not going to take any legal action if they report things to you, in good faith. That's number one, of incentives, because you're trying to create this situation where people trust that they can give you this information. Nothing bad is going to happen to them. And maybe something good is going to happen, right? It could be money. It could be something else. I mean, honestly, when we were at the Pentagon, we were imagining, rides in a fighter jet as like a potential prize for things. These are incentives. So when you think about incentives, don't think about it as just money.
Right. Okay. That makes complete sense. So you mentioned that, person reaches out to company, hey, I found this bug. I'm going to give you 60 days to patch it before I disclose it. Is the researcher the one who should be setting those kinds of guidelines, or should there be something clearly?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So Vuln Disclosure, I just cut you off because I'm like, yes, I'm so passionate about this. Vuln Disclosure Vuln Disclosure policies started from researchers. It was researchers who were just like, we've been beating our heads against these brick wall companies, and we're just trying to tell them about these bugs, and they're ignoring us, or they're threatening us, or all this stuff. You know what? We're going to create a little policy and just, send it over when we send the bug report. And it's just to let them know, this is how we will behave. So this is what you can expect from us. We come in peace, but we aren't willing to take forever, or let you take forever. But we recognize that it's a nice courtesy for us to tell you, as opposed to dropping the entire thing on the full disclosure mailing list, which is basically how disclosures were happening when a company was stuffing their ears full of cotton and wouldn't listen to researchers. So yes, absolutely. The timeline is dictated by the discoverer of the vulnerability. You can negotiate with that discoverer of the vulnerability, but if you think about it, whatever they're after, chances are it's not the money, it's not the fame, it is probably to get the bug fixed. And if you're not taking it seriously enough as the organization receiving it, absolutely, that researcher, especially if they are an ethical researcher and want to protect people, they will, after a certain period of time, say, you know what? You're not taking your job protecting your own users seriously. I'm going to have to do it for you and let everybody know. I'm sorry. So yes, absolutely, it is in the researcher's hands. Now, that being said, if an organization really does need more time, the best advice for them is to be transparent about that. Say, look, we hit a snag in our investigation, or we were testing and we hit a regression. We're going to need a little bit more time, and give an estimate, right? Because this is a dialogue and it needs to be done with mutual respect. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's what I was looking for. It's like, researchers don't know the op tempo of the organization. Maybe they're already mid-sprint, or, maybe it would take them more than 60 days to fix it, or maybe there's major architectural changes. I think communication is key. Like you said, it's got to be a two-way street. And we had some people from JSOF, Israeli company, who had disclosed the Trek vulnerabilities to the IP, custom IP vulnerabilities. And communication wasn't Trek's forte, from what we got from the podcast, including lawyers looking up the researchers on LinkedIn, and what have you. And we did talk about some of the communications issues that was there, because they were obviously not used to people telling them their baby was ugly. So appreciate the idea for that. Mr. Betcher, did you have any other questions? I know that we're getting down to the bottom of the hour here, so.
Just to comment, I think communications is really key here. And the incentives, I was strictly thinking money, and right. A t-shirt, I guess, can go a long way if it's sort of a
it's got to be more special than a t-shirt, honestly, right? So there's certain things you can do with t-shirts, such as these are the t-shirts that are, they're only for the researcher or something like that. We've even done those kinds of incentives internally to an organization, right? It's like, oh, you want this special t-shirt? Well, we're only doing one limited run, and it's just for, the team that does X, Y, and Z. So it depends on the t-shirt, right? But, most researchers, one, they want to get the bug fixed. But if they do want money, they probably want a job, right? So the amount of bug bounty money, that would be nice. But if it comes with a contract offer, to look for more, and that's a steady and guaranteed income, that's a better incentive, right? Before I ever had permission at Microsoft to buy bugs, I had permission to buy tools and to license tools. I had permission to liquor up the entirety of the researcher world with my Microsoft Amex, and everything. But in terms of what they really wanted, they wanted their bug to get fixed. They had been waiting and waiting, and they just wanted their bug to get fixed. So the biggest incentive, I think, is mutual respect, and that's what we're trying to put out there. And I think that organizations that don't treat researchers as a potential enemy, legal liability, all of that stuff, they are oceans ahead of organizations that view researchers as a problem they would like to minimize and go away, or bury under non-disclosure agreements in order to get a bounty payment. My friend Kevin Finister walked away from over $30,000. It was like over $33,000 bug bounty, because DJI, the drone manufacturer, wanted him to sign an NDA, not just about the bug, but about the data he found, the PII he found. And he was not okay with helping them cover up their data breach. So he walked away from that. So you have to understand that incentives are really about what makes a person do the thing that you would like them to do. Money is absolutely not the best tool to get people to do what you would like them to do. I mean, we all know that. So organizations have to think things through in a much more comprehensive and, ethical for their customers kind of way, ethical for their users, and treat security researchers as partners in helping them secure their users. Because that's really what it is. Nobody tells you in great detail exactly how they exploited you, like Dr. Evil or something, in order to actually harm you or harm your users. Even if they are asking for money. So what if they're asking for money? Shouldn't hackers be paid for our skills? I mean, I'm a big proponent of us getting paid and staying out of jail. So, that's been my life's work.
Right. So it seems like a lot of this was born out of the fact that there's not good communication between security researchers and companies, whether it be intentional or not. Some of the comments that I thought of was how would a company, let's say they are doing a vulnerability disclosure program, should they have a form that you can fill out to help get better write-ups? Because having worked at a company that had an embryonic, vulnerability disclosure program, we would get tons of emails. It's like, ha ha, owned you, please pay me monies or whatever. Then we would okay, yes, great. Send us a write-up. Here's a PGP key to encrypt it and whatever. Oh yeah, I don't want to use the PGPs and whatevers. And, here, I don't want to use your forms. Are standardized forms for write-ups useful? Should we require encrypted, comms? Here's a Google Drive link, upload your stuff here. I mean, what are we looking for terms of just reporting that effectively and securely?
Well, what's interesting is, Microsoft still has the biggest intake funnel in the world. Even when I was still there, they had somewhere between 150,000 and 200,000 non-spam email messages per year sent to secure at Microsoft. So those aren't all bug reports, but they were non-spam and required some level of initial triage. So even with that volume, I would say that, a form can help you sort of narrow things down, I guess. But in a lot of cases, it enhances, sort of the confusion, especially if the language barrier is part of the problem. What we found was better was, just asking for a specific set of details. If we got, a report that was somewhat unintelligible or lacked details, and those details are actually in an appendix in the ISO standards. It says, it would be good to ask for these pieces of information in your policy somewhere of how you appreciate receiving vuln reports. Because, if someone is new to reporting vulnerabilities, they may think that all you need to do is do a little YouTube video and put some techno music on there, or dubstep or whatever, and send that over with a little LOL. And that's, and where is my bounty, right? And so asking up front in your published policy and saying, please include the following, that helps. But yeah, forms or no forms, it's really a matter of having someone at the front end who does a little bit of intelligent triage and cleanup. So it's not just, is this spam or not spam? Is this a real vulnerability? Maybe. Do I need to clean up what the repro steps are and ask the researcher to clarify those for me? Yes. And that person at that, what we call tier 1 triage of the process, should do that role and then pass on to a proper case manager to do additional work, on that case and open up an investigation. But I'm seeing a lot, of organizations where they're kind of conflating all of those steps. And then they're just saying, I'm just overwhelmed and everything, because they've got a security engineer sitting at that very front level tier 1 triage, which I don't know if you ever read this article way back in the day, but Popular Science back in, I think it was 2008, published the top 10 worst jobs in science. And Microsoft Security Grunt, which was what their word for, whoever sits on the other end of secure at Microsoft.com. They said Microsoft Security Grunt was in the top 10 worst jobs in science, right between elephant vasectomist and whale feces researcher. These are true things that were published. We, in fact, to talk about incentives, we in the Microsoft Security Response Center took that top 10, highlighted our spot in it, and made t-shirts. I still have my Microsoft Security Grunt t-shirt. So talk about it, internal incentives to just keep going, right? I don't know where your original question was, but I'm really glad I got to say elephant vasectomist on your podcast, because I feel like it was missing this entire time.
You were the first one. You're
Legit.
Definitely. I'm sad I wasn't the first one.
But you can repeat it later when harkening back to this.
Oh, I definitely will.
That's right. And whale feces. I mean, let's give it up for whale feces, and I don't remember which our job was better than or worse than, but I knew we were in the middle. We were between that. That is the sandwich of worst jobs that we were in. Yeah.
Goodness. Wow. Yeah.
Carry a large bag.
Exactly. Very large bag.
Both of those jobs. That's terrible. Yeah. And 200,000 non-spam email messages a year. I mean, that makes sense that you would be right in there, right in the middle of that.
Yep. Mr. Betcher, Ms. Berlin, do you have any other questions for Ms. Katie?
Only if she has any war stories on like either the best or the worst bug bounties.
Yeah, that was literally
maybe.
Yeah, because I mean, you mentioned the jet rides, and then you mentioned like the shirt, obviously. So I mean,
let's see. I don't know. I mean, like I have some. Let's see, bug bounties, best and worst. Oh well, okay. After I left Microsoft, a friend of mine, security researcher, asked me if I wouldn't mind disclosing the bug on his behalf to Microsoft, because he had a bad time and he just didn't want to deal with them. And he knew, hey, I still know the folks over there. And could I just pass it along? So I wrote, hi, I did not discover this. This is a discovery of a friend of mine who asked me to pass it along to you. Here's the URL, and it was actually like an info leak. So I didn't need to do any steps to repro in there. I was like, here's the URL with the info leak. Thank you. Bye-bye. And they wrote back to me, and it was a new case manager. And so the sort of the generic almost auto response, they don't actually do an autoresponder, but the one they're trained to send back, came back, and I was like, okay, that's the generic one. And then I got the next one from somebody trying to do triage, and they said, can you give me the steps to reproduce this vulnerability? And I was like, they didn't click that link or read that I said it was an info disclosure. Okay. That's pretty bad, right? And so I just reiterated, I said, click the link. It has some info disclosure that you should know about. I didn't find it. It was passed on to me. Enjoy. And then they came back with the generic response, which I considered to be kind of like the worst thing ever. They said, thank you. And we'd appreciate if you would follow coordinated vulnerability disclosure and give us time to fix it before you go public with it. And I wrote back, I was like, I wrote that policy at Microsoft, and you need to do a little bit better, about identifying who it is you're talking to when you were lecturing them about their own policy that they wrote. So I thought that was like, wow, amazing how the communication, like basic communication of, did you read that one line that said click the link and it's info disclosure? Oh, I guess you did not. And also you did not bother reading that you are responding to the person who wrote your policy with an admonition to please follow that policy. And I was like, that's how far we have fallen. So you do need to maintain some awareness of, reading and who is reporting your bugs to you in a good Vuln Disclosure or bug bounty program. Needless to say, they eventually sorted it out and removed the info disclosure, which was all we wanted in the first place. Nobody's looking for a bounty here. I gotta say, probably the best. Ooh, I don't know. One of my favorite ones, I didn't work on this myself, but one of my favorite ones was, Apple, they've offered $1 million+ for bug bounties, et cetera, right? Do you remember, I think it was over a year ago, that teenager found the FaceTime bug where he was trying to coordinate, I think they were trying to play Fortnite, right? And so you can do a group FaceTime. And what he had done was he had basically called, his other friends and then called himself. And when he called himself invited himself to the group FaceTime, he accepted the group FaceTime as himself, and then it auto accepted on the other phones. And he found he had video and audio already these other phones, right? So this is a teenager who is not a security researcher, who stumbled upon a vulnerability. And I find it to be the best story just because it was a lesson in relay race baton drops is what it was. So Apple has a well-established Vuln Disclosure program. They have a bug bounty program with the highest prices in the industry. And this kid and his lawyer mom, who was trying to help him disclose this, could not reach the right technical contact. They were trying to get him to register as a developer to report this bug, because that's what you had to do at the time. It was like baton kept dropping. And this went on until finally, I think they got to the right team on Friday night, like 11 p.m. at night. They finally got it to the right team. And of course, once the team saw it, they made the decision to shut down the group FaceTime feature for a minute, right? Right. That was what they did. But to me, it was like, here's an organization that allegedly is one of the leaders in Vuln Disclosure response and bug bounty. And here is a legitimate, very serious critical vulnerability. And a member of the regular public had such a hard time getting to the right person that, I essentially was like, okay, so maybe it wasn't the best bug bounty story, but I'm looking at it like this is one of the best stories of our industry and this weird state that companies and organizations can find themselves in, where they think they've got everything. They've got a VDP, they've got a bug bounty program. But if you actually look at the details of, can you get people to privately disclose issues to you and give you a chance to fix it before they go to the media and the public? Well, they failed at those litmus tests of basic functionality of a well-designed VDP and bug bounty program. Anyway, I just think it's maybe it's good news for smaller organizations who are less resourced than Apple to think, well, at least all of my customer service contacts have a script to be able to forward me security issues in the security team. That's more than Apple had. At least my social media team knows that when a tweet goes out and mentions our brand and says, I'm trying to find a security contact, that social media team also has a script and says, come right away over here. We will take care of you and we will concierge you and your bug over to the right folks. And there won't be, whack-a-bug anymore, hopefully.
Nice.
Did that kid get anything?
No, I don't think he did. I think he got nothing because he ended up having to go to the press. This was like a week going where he was like, and his mom, go mom, right? But it was like, she was a lawyer. So she was like, we want to reach the right people, and maybe there's a bug bounty and we want to tell them and stuff, but we need to reach to the right people. So I think they were disqualified from any bug bounty because they ended up having to go to the press, which is understandable of a rule of bug bounties, like fine. But it was the baton dropping of the relay race that just kills me on that one. So no, if the kid didn't get anything from Apple, I mean, I at least would hope that he'd maybe be offered, a summer
Like a new iPhone or something.
Yeah, new iPhone with less a less surveilly iPhone, and like, I don't know. I mean, I think a summer internship, because clearly the kid was, at the very least, would be killer in QA. You know what I mean? Like, what I think all should be paid to do quality assurance. I absolutely think so. All teenagers and smaller people too, but you can at least pay the teenagers legally.
Right. Yep.
Right.
So, Katie, I know your time was very valuable. I appreciate you coming on. You are hiring at LutaSec for, I see your careers page. You're looking for tier 2 triage and security engineers.
You know what? We have to change that page. We are hiring, but we're hiring for developers. Developers. Yeah.
Okay.
So, that's a great reminder that I need to change that page. We're actually working on, this is exciting. We are working with diversity and inclusion consultants to make sure that our job descriptions for our next round really don't artificially block folks from different communities who might not ordinarily apply. So we're putting out developer role job descriptions, but the reason it's taken us a little bit is that we're trying to be very careful about it. What was great is these job roles that you see there, we actually had an amazing, huge and diverse pipeline. Maybe it's because, this company is run by a middle-aged, woman with pink hair, but perhaps, who's half Native Pacific Islander. Perhaps that was part of it, but we got a great, pipeline actually of applicants. So we're hoping to do that again, but be even more deliberate about putting language in there that is very, very welcoming and inclusive and will encourage a diverse workforce. Because right now at my company, I have to maintain diversity by making sure we have enough white guys, because we don't, right? And so we might need to hire one or two more. It's
I know a white guy. I know a white guy.
I know a couple of them.
But so we want to, but we absolutely want to, welcome all folks and all applicants. But really, we're looking for a lead developer. And we'll try and get those job descriptions up. I don't know when you're going to have this podcast up, but we'll try and make the correct job descriptions to have them up there by the time this airs. But lead developer is the role I'm really anxious to fill first. And I'm looking for someone who is, well, obviously able to work remote with no problem, because that's just all of our lives, but it was going to be that way anyway. And then someone who can help build a small team. Ultimately, I'm also open to hiring a small team of developers who already work well together. The idea here is, I want, maybe 4 to 5 developers, including a lead, to work on a product that actually helps operationalize and, sort of automate some of the assessment work that my company currently does manually for gauging maturity. So how about that? Would that not be like really fun to work on? And also, we have every Friday is, I'm not going to swear on this podcast, but it begins with an A and then says Free Friday. So it's a word, Free Friday. Every Friday is a paid day off, meaning there are no meetings, there is no work. And that is true for contractors as well. So, I mean, my company is basically trying to do a lot of different things and creativity when it comes to labor and the workforce, and just being flexible and fitting work around our lives as opposed to the other way around, and still getting stuff done and having a good time. So
fantastic. Awesome.
Yes.
So if this goes out before the careers page is updated, do you have a careers or something like that where somebody could, maybe there's a job that doesn't fit their skill set and they'd still like to come and maybe interview and work with y'all? Is there a careers at?
Yeah, I think that is exactly our email address for it.
Awesome.
Okay. And if folks want to check on the lutasecurity.com/careers page, we'll hopefully get that updated very shortly. But we are, in fact, I think one of my meetings later today is with the D&I consultants, who we're working with, who are great and really, helping us make sure that we don't accidentally weed out applicants just in our wording of our application, which apparently this is a thing that happens, and it's something where you need to pay attention to these things to not artificially, discourage people who would have been a great fit for your organization. So that's what we're up to. And I'm just happy that I'm a business owner who's able to create jobs and create them in this very deliberate way that I believe in.
And that was it for part 2 of our interview with Katie Moussouris. We thank her for her time and her effort, not just in developing the framework, the Vulnerability Coordination Maturity Model, but also her tireless efforts in making sure that things like job descriptions, which is a systemic problem in our industry, is being covered, and making sure that everybody has an equal chance of being hired, and nothing in our descriptions discount or dissuade people from wanting to apply for a job. If you are interested in applying and working at LutaSecurity, you can go to their website, www.lutasecurity.com. That's LUTASecurity.com/careers, CAREERS. And there are careers online there where you can see what type of positions are available. Those may change depending on when you're listening to this. You can also go email careers@lutasecurity.com. If you don't see a job there that piques your interest, maybe you have a skill set for something else that may be helpful to LutaSecurity whenever you are looking for a position. And you can also follow her on Twitter at Katie Mo, which is K8EM0. And again, we thank her for her time and wish her only the best of continued success in her organization.
You can find show notes for this and all of our shows at www.breakingsecurity.com. You can also find an RSS link on the site to add to your favorite podcatcher. You can find all of us on Twitter. Miss Berlin can be found at InfoSyster, INFOSYSTIR. Mr. Betcher can be found at BetcherPwned, BOETTCHERPWNED. And you can follow me on Twitter at Brian Brake, BRYANBRAKE. We have a Slack. Come join us on our Slack. A lot of great things going on there, a lot of channels of various InfoSec-related subjects. You can get an invite on Twitter by emailing our official Twitter handle for the show at Brakesec, BRAKESEC, or you can email us at bds.podcast@gmail.com. Thank you to all of our Patreon supporters for their monetary assistance by offsetting costs involved in putting out a weekly show. Zoom fees, Libsyn hosting, domain purchase, renewal, equipment upgrades, time and effort building the community we have. We appreciate all of your help and support. If you'd like a t-shirt, stickers, coffee mug, or just to show your support for the show, you can check out our TPub site, www.tpublic.com/user/BDS podcast. We thrive on your feedback. A quick 5-star comment on iTunes or Google Play Store or your favorite streaming service, Spotify, Pandora, what have you, go a long way to gaining us additional visibility. It takes no time at all, and we appreciate your help in spreading the word. That was it for Breaking Down Security this week. Be safe, be well, be kind to one another, take care of yourself because you're the only you have, and we'll talk to you again soon.